Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, December 12th, 2018, and time for another show. We got plenty going on in the morning here, both on the air and off. A little bit of a hectic day, but Daily Co's Radio is live now. Bill has told me so from Portland, Maine. That's how I know it's true. Will Kagro X, me, be on the air when Michael Cohen's sentencing comes down? I don't know, actually. Holy cow, wouldn't that be exciting? Stay tuned. When's the sentencing coming down? Then I would know. Not that I would be able to monitor it from the... that would make an exciting last half hour of the show. Okay, here comes the judge. And now he's going to say something. I don't know how we would cover it, but maybe Armando can chime in and tell us what's up. Of course, by that time, it'll probably be time to usher Joan in. Maybe we can watch with one eye on these things, or you can tell me what's going on. Anyway, time to begin another show. And, golly, if there aren't a whole lot of things going on here. Anyhow, where are we? Let's see. Should we read the mail? Should we thumb through Pocket? My computer is not ready. I'm still concerned about this laptop dragging along here. I mean, it's getting old, I suppose. Maybe that's all there is to it, and I'm just going to have to put up with it. All right. Well, lots of stories to catch up on. Today is Wednesday, big day for bringing in guests. No solitary confinement for me today, I guess. Gil Aquino having a conversation with me alongside the beginning of the morning program. I know. And you remember yesterday, of course, we were wondering about whether or not I would rather, if I was stuck in prison, all right, like the given that you're stuck in prison, is solitary confinement preferable to the dangers of being exposed to the general population, or is it better to, not lose your mind in solitary confinement and run the risks of being in with the Gen Pop, as they say on the TV shows? I don't know whether people who are really in prison ever say anything like that. And the answer for me is I have no idea. I've not been in prison, and I can't pretend to know anything about it. So I was just musing aloud there. But by all accounts, everybody says that solitary confinement is horrific, and I assume that if you had experienced both, you would, despite it all, prefer the dangers of being in with the general population, which is a hell of a statement. I guess that pretty much wraps it up. I'm just saying I don't know. I couldn't tell you offhand without experiencing both, and we're just going to have to leave it there because my plan from this point forward is not to experience either. So we'll just leave it there, I think. And it's one of the few subjects I think we can just leave there and drop it without repercussions, I hope. Anyway, lots to catch up on, as I said today. Yesterday, you may have seen on television, if you have a tally, and perhaps you were lying down and watching some tally with your close friends or a porn star or whoever you might want to watch tally with. And you might have seen the President of the United States, or so it was alleged, meeting with the incoming Speaker of the House, by all accounts. Certainly looks, we can catch up on how the dynamics of that contest are going, but it's looking more and more solid by the minute for Nancy Pelosi, probably in part due to her performance yesterday alongside Chuck Schumer with Donald Trump, I guess, negotiating the deal for the wall, for which there won't be any, and it provided a lot of comic relief for a lot of people. Meanwhile, over on Capitol Hill, the 3-hour hearing during which Republicans whined and complained to the head of Google that they did not understand how the internets work was pretty funny too. So maybe we can hit on both of those things today. Greg Dworkin here nice and early. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Hey, good morning. With so much going on, how could we not come early?
I don't know. It's impossible not to. There's so many stories. I'm just about champing at the bit, which I don't really understand as a metaphor, but okay.
Right. One of my favorite pictures is Nancy and Chuck walking away from the White House, and Nancy's just putting on her glasses and smiling, and Chuck is walking and looking down at her feet, and the caption reads, "Is that blood on your heels?" And Nancy says, "Keep walking."
Yeah, she's looking a little Matrixy walking out of there with those sunglasses on and the long coat and everything.
Well, that's pretty much what happened. And basically, you had a scenario, and this is the weird thing is this is because Trump insisted that this all be public.
Yes, he thought.
And Nancy
I guess
kept saying, "Don't, let's do this." No, no, no. I want to be in public. I want to show my base. I'm really strong for the wall because border security, and border security.
Yeah. Yep. I guess he thought he was going to win that. He went into it like Wile E. Coyote with a Acme Pelosi seed and thought the trap was laid.
Yeah, with the eyebrows going up and down and up and down right
blink,
before he walks off the cliff.
Blink. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Good job.
So Stephen Dennis, congressional reporter, points out this is a periodic reminder that Donald Trump had an offer in hand to fund the wall and turned it down.
He did.
The Democrats offered Trump $25 billion.
5 times what he was crying for yesterday.
Right. You got to have Dr. Evil sitting there with the pinky. $25 billion for walled border in return for a path to citizenship for the DACA eligibles, which the White House rejected.
Okay.
Okay, the roll call vote was 54-45. Most Democrats voted to fund the wall if it meant the DACA eligible population would get a path to citizenship. Trump issued a veto threat, demanded cuts to family immigration. Democrats said they're not backing that without a deal. Trump's preferred plan was also put up for a vote, just got 39 votes in the Senate.
How much money was attached to his preferred deal? Do we know?
I don't recall that, but
went down
I
in
do
flames,
recall
so
he
no one
could have
remembers.
had his wall, and he could have had it for 5 times the amount he's demanding now. And instead, he's going to get the Michael Corleone. Here's my offer. You get nothing.
We've got to make
And
great
I'd
deals.
appreciate it if you would personally bring me my coffee every morning.
Yeah, well, okay. I mean, that's one of those great deals, I guess. Got to have a businessman.
So that's the background for this. So what are the visuals? We see Trump getting mad and then turning red, not getting his way. We see people standing up to him. It was annoying him because I don't think that there was a single comment that either Chuck or Nancy made that Trump didn't interrupt them.
Yes, that he loves doing that. That was his strong look.
Like I do with you. We're New Yorkers. You're not interrupting. It means you're not listening. But the visuals for it are not very good. I mean, even I understand that when I interrupt you. I always, make a joke out of it. But
Yes.
the fact of the matter is that here he is on TV interrupting them. And the Nancy's sitting there like, a grown-up saying, I really don't want to contradict you in public and point out that everything you're saying is really stupid, so I'm going to refrain from doing that. Why don't we just do this in private so I can tell you you're an idiot and you don't know what you're talking about? I don't want to do that in public.
Okay.
And Chuck isn't even looking at Trump.
Yeah,
He's
he
looking
can't
at the
stand it.
camera because he's Chuck Schumer.
Oh, that's true.
And he knows exactly where the camera is in the room, and he's smirking. And the funny thing is, it's working because Trump is just getting madder and madder, and Chuck is just sitting there laughing. And Trump doesn't come across as being strong. He comes across as being an idiot. And Schumer is openly mocking him. Yes, Nancy, I won the Senate. Yeah, well, you won Indiana and you won North Dakota. Wow, that's really great. If you kind of brag about that, Chuck Schumer says, you're really in trouble.
Yep.
And that was preceded by a small contretemps. Trump is trying to argue with the minority leader, soon to be Madam Speaker, about how many votes Trump might get in the Congress for his stupid proposal that nobody likes.
Yeah.
Now, one thing you don't argue with Nancy Pelosi is how many votes you have.
Not a good bet.
Not a good bet. Boehner lost that bet. Paul Ryan lost that bet. There's no way Trump has any clue as to what's going on. The only number Trump knows is 10.
Apparently.
I say that because, how many people are applying for the chief of staff? Well, 10.
Right.
There's 10 people that want this job. Yeah, really? And name them. Well, there's 10.
Right.
I just named them 10. There's 10, there's 10, there's 10, there's 10, there's 10. That adds up to 10, right?
Right.
And Nancy says, Mr. President, I don't mean to contradict you in public and make a fool out of you. I'm really trying not to do that, but you don't have the votes. When she says you don't have the votes, you can believe you don't have the votes.
Yeah, not that he went in for that. That was a great exchange. I do, Nancy. You well then have a vote.
Well, then go ahead and have a vote. Let's change the subject. Let me yell at Chuck. Maybe I can get somewhere there.
I mean,
and of course, while all
but...
this is happening, Mike Pence is doing his weekend at Bernie's imitation, right? And he's not moving.
Yeah.
Trying to breathe. He's trying not to be there. And it's the visuals are just terrible for the White House, and that's why there were all the memes of Nancy walking out of the White House, putting her sunglasses on, and behind her the White House is catching fire and blowing up. I mean, it was terrible, and it isn't just me saying that. It's the media saying that this morning. The Republicans are saying that. The conservative media is saying. I mean, there's just no way you can spin this as being a Trump win. Here's a typical example. I'll give just a couple. This is Tom Nichols, conservative, on how it went down yesterday. And he says, if I can just find his little tweet here, I will find it. Honesty makes me say it. The most statesman-like person in charge in that White House disaster was Pelosi. Second place to Schumer for baiting Trump into owning a shutdown, which, by the way, is a huge political deal.
Yeah.
Honorable mention to Pence for willing himself to blend in with the furniture.
He places ahead of Trump by doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing.
Bill Kristol, I'm not a Democrat, and it's none of my business, but based on what I saw of their respective performances in that Oval Office meeting, I don't understand why it's Nancy Pelosi who's facing a leadership challenge and Chuck Schumer who isn't. Which, by the way, is making me follow up with a piece that just came out, USA Today, Joe Lawrence, which is you don't bring a novice to a knife fight. That's why Democrats need Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, I don't know how that would have gone with Seth Moulton.
Right, exactly. So the person who did worst yesterday was Seth Moulton.
Oh.
And in fact, after that performance, Pelosi may get unanimous consent to be Madam Speaker from the Democrats. But in Joe Lawrence's column, she asks an intriguing point and interviews a couple of Republicans on this and says, why don't Democrats appreciate Pelosi, GOP asks. There's no question that Democrats need younger leaders, and it's increasingly apparent who they might be. Hakeem Jeffries in New York, Cherry Bustos of Illinois, David, how do you pronounce his name? Cicilline of Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah, I've never really got that one right.
Just rose to higher positions, and there's another group right behind him. Democrats will have plenty of choices in 2020 or whenever the time comes. For now, though, it's reassuring Pelosi has lived through an impeachment. She's lived through a difficult climate change vote that House members cast for nothing because it died in the Senate. Presumably she's learned from mistakes, her own and those of others. But take it from a pair of Republicans who once demonized her, having had a whole lot to do with the RNC 2010 Fire Pelosi campaign. Democrats would be crazy to do just that. Republicans didn't like Pelosi precisely because of her effectiveness, Doug Hay, former communications director for the Republican National Committee, tweeted last month. Exactly, former RNC chairman Michael Steele chimed in. Why do you think we made her the focus of the 2010 campaign and not Obama? It still amazes me how much Democrats continue to underestimate the effectiveness of Nancy Pelosi. I didn't get it then. I still don't.
Oh. Well, I could explain it, but...
Okay, explain it.
Well, there's no election for anything in the Senate. That's one thing. It's one of the things you need in order to garner opposition is to have a dispute over who's going to occupy a position. There wasn't any change in the balance there, and so everybody just continues in their office.
You're explaining why Schumer skates, not why Pelosi has opposition.
Pelosi has opposition because it's time to decide a question, and people always raise their... These are politicians, and you're asking, who wants to be in higher office? Oh, me.
Yeah, who wants a promotion?
Yeah.
Raise your hand.
Right, so that's the answer. I mean, does it matter that she's more effective than you? Not to me, it doesn't. How about to everybody else? Oh, well, you'll have to ask them. Oh, unanimous? Crap. All right, well, I tried.
Well, but, after, the whole thing, and I stole this from one of our Daily Kos commenters, Dr. Who, But I tweeted a picture of Fearless Girl standing the bull down.
Yes.
That's Nancy Pelosi. Just a reminder.
Put some sunglasses on it.
Yeah, well, you see it from the back, so you can't see she's wearing sunglasses. But, the whole idea is really encapsulated by that whole meeting yesterday. And Trump is just unused to having strong women stand up to him and tell him he's wrong, and he just lost it.
Yeah, strong anything. But that's also a serious problem. Where are all the strong men who are supposed to be so much stronger than women? The only person I've seen stand up to him, period, has been Nancy Pelosi. As it happens,
that's because you don't see Putin and Xi and the other leaders behind doors. Those are not public
private
discussions. Those are private.
Yeah,
so.
Unless you're Russian press said so.
But the other side of the coin is that if this is how Trump negotiates, which he put on a public display of, and you have to have the confidence that behind doors he's somehow not making a fool of himself in front of these other world leaders, good luck to you.
The Reagan skit, your favorite.
And that's but the other problem is that Republicans have been exposed in terms of having to support a guy whose negotiating skills aren't up to speed, and yet everybody just saw it. And the only reason people saw it is Trump insisted on putting it on television. So that's a twofer. He can't negotiate, and his judgment is terrible. And that's just highlighted for them. And with everything else going on with the Russia probes and the Michael Cohen sentencing and the felonies that Trump has done, they have to go and defend that in their own head, let alone, to other people. And there's only so far you can shrug and say, well, it doesn't really matter, or it's getting to the point where people like Orrin Hatch are saying, yeah, I get everything you're saying here, but I just don't care. Because you can't defend it. You have to say, I don't care. It's the only possible response.
True. I guess that's really it. Well, bad day for him.
So really, it was a terrible day for him. And it's just starting because it's also a reminder, 2 years of this. Yeah. Assuming you last 2 years, which I'm not assuming.
Oh. Okay. Well, pro tip, I guess, there for Donald Trump. The Apprentice was an edited program. It was not presented live before a studio audience, and the job of all the editors was to take the garbage they were given, because he would never, I'm sure he would not do second takes unless he thought his hair was messed up. Right. The challenge to the editors was take what we're given and tape things after the fact if you need to, rig up interviews with participants in order to make what he just said not moronic, but have it make sense. Oh. All right. Well, you can't do that live with the presidency. It doesn't work that way.
So here's Tom Nichols writing in the Washington Post this morning about bigger picture stuff. Trump made competence a dirty word. Now he has to settle for second-rate talent. Actively bad-mouthing expertise is how you get the current White House quagmire.
Okay.
Last week, just over 2 years later, Trump tweeted his first Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, was dumb as a rock. After Tillerson said Trump doesn't like to read, Trump announced former Fox News personality Heather Nauert will succeed former Governor Nikki Haley as U.S. ambassador, and Vice President Pence's highly touted aide Nick Ayers, remember the guy that was associated with Eric Greitens, the guy who was keeping a woman tied up in his basement for his own personal needs. Vice President's highly touted aide Nick Ayers announced via tweet he's turning down Trump's offer to make him White House Chief of Staff. Despite early assurances he'd have an all-star administration, Trump now faces the most difficult part of his presidency, increasingly cut off from first-rate talent. Notwithstanding a few obvious exceptions, among them Defense Secretary Mattis, Senior National Security Council Advisor Fiona Hill, Trump is pulling a cabinet and White House staff behind him that's replete with bench warmers and third stringers. He wound up that way in part by vilifying elites and mocking expertise. So his inability to recruit or even listen to top people, you saw that on display with the Pelosi-Schumer meeting, his inability to recruit or even to listen to top people has hampered everything from Trump's foreign policy to his own legal defense. His hostility to sound advice coupled with reliance on his frequently terrible instincts has produced the kind of synergy, or to use a newly infamous word, of incompetence in the White House and beyond. Things go wrong in the world stage, Capitol Hill, or with the media. Trump never blames himself. Instead, he blames everybody else, including the people who work with him. Experts, who are also known as people who know what they're doing, have had 2 years to observe this and have understandably become less willing to work for him. Their numbers inside the administrative dwindle, lesser lights take over, more mistakes are made, lather, rinse, repeat. And that was all on display yesterday, all of it. The inability to listen, the inability to take advice from anybody else. He's got to be the center of attention. Who was it? Theodore Roosevelt's daughter said something about the fact that, he's at weddings, he's got to be the bride. At funerals, he's got to be the corpse. He's got to be the center of everything.
My goodness. I don't know, but it sounds
That's Trump.
About right for, it sounds right for, was it Ivanka who said it?
Could have.
Any chance? I don't know.
She should say
it's
it.
The only daughter
actually, Melania will probably say it because she tends to take things that other people said and make it her own.
That's right. This is my own quote.
This is my own quote.
To be or not to be? That is the question.
Yeah. Now, how is this all playing? This is Axios this morning. Trump's reality tremor as Mueller fallout piles up. Last week's stunning court filings detonated what one official calls a reality tremor that has White House officials and key allies increasingly aware of President Trump's rising legal and political vulnerability. I'll point out, by the way, that this article is being written after Friday's open court filings, which, as I said on Monday, completely changed the tenor of how the media is reporting all of this stuff. Like all of a sudden it's serious. Like all of a sudden all the stuff that we've been talking about for months or years comes to the fore and they notice. And we know this phenomenon happened right after the Iraq War one summer. But nonetheless, Axios says what's happening, some top officials are suddenly much more attuned to the political fallout from the Mueller investigation and are growing more anxious about Trump's re-election prospects, according to people close to the president. Now, you have to remember, first and foremost, and it's really important in analyzing this, people associated with the president are really stupid, but we just went over that with the Tom Nichols piece. And on the outside, some hardcore Trump allies who have mostly accepted his denials about Robert Mueller were rattled by the specificity of the Friday night revelations by the special counsel and by federal prosecutors, in other words, those open court filings.
Yeah.
One Trump loyalist said after a day of conversation with hardcore MAGA online influencers, Make America Great Again influencers, these are the people most predisposed to believing the witch hunt rhetoric, but they're now expressing real concerns. Even those diehards start looking at the legal stuff and have a hard time dismissing it all, the loyalist said. Stuff I've told you. It's one thing to dismiss when Daily Kos says this guy's corrupt. It's another thing when Mueller says it. And the whole idea that, we already know what's going to happen with Mueller. It won't have an impact because he's got Fox News and a propaganda network, and everybody will shrug like Orrin Hatch and say it doesn't matter, just isn't true. And this is simply cataloging that even with the diehards, stuff like that breaks through. I think Southern District of New York has changed people's perceptions. That's viewed as a greater potential threat to Trump directly than Mueller. Collusion still met with eye rolls. How do you interpret that? These are incredibly concrete people. You have to show them the piece of paper that says Trump is guilty before they will be willing to connect the dots.
Right.
The Mueller stuff is way worse, but they can't begin to imagine that it might be true, so therefore they don't. But Southern District of New York, with the Cohen stuff, says here it is. He is individual one. He committed 2 felonies. They can't ignore that.
Unless they do.
Well, but they're saying they can't.
Oh.
And the thing is, the Russia stuff is way much worse. He's a traitor. He's sold out. It's money laundering. It's influence peddling. It's trading sanctions for Trump Tower. But no, it's not on paper. Therefore, it's not real. Therefore, I don't have to pay attention. Mm-hmm. And the Cohen stuff is right there, and they can't ignore it. Even MAGA loyalists, the piece says, are asking why Trump feels the need to go on Twitter with bizarre legal explanations that don't seem to help. AP reported for some Republicans, the implication that the president may have directed a campaign finance violation could foreshadow a true turning point in the Republican relationship when Mueller releases his report.
A pivot, maybe. What if he pivots?
This new recognition is made outside political savvy, one of the top criteria in the frenetic search for the next White House chief of staff. That's why they're going after Nick Ayers. They figured that even though Eric Greitens went ahead and did this, He still remained governor for a while. Therefore, that's the kind of person you need.
That may
Right?
be,
I mean,
yeah.
that's
a
what I'm
point.
interpreting this as.
He didn't immediately jump off of a top of a tall building, so there we go.
One person involved in the conversation said the White House is looking for a political pro who speaks the language of modern campaigns and can help focus the administration's message. So now they're looking at David Bossie, Mark Meadows, David Urban, Secretary Treasury Mnuchin, Matt Whitaker, Mick Mulvaney, and Chris Christie. That's why they want those people. But, of course, if they have any sense at all, they're going to say no thank you.
Well, that's true. And, of course, Chris Christie got trounced in a modern campaign. We just watched it happen.
Right. But goes back to Tom Nichols' point. When you're picking up third-rate people, that's what happens.
I guess that's true. Okay.
All right. And this is going to we're coming up to the break soon, but after the break, we're going to look at a Ron Brownstein piece about the foundations of Trump's coalition cracking and who that coalition really is. But again, I get to the point of emphasizing the whole assumption that Trump's base never changes and that the Republicans in Congress will never stop backing him isn't true. It's true for some people like Orrin Hatch who have just given everything up and have no choice. They're going to lose with him. They're going to lose without him. May as well go down with the ship because they already, threw in their But he's old and he's retiring. He doesn't care.
Yeah,
for the younger people who actually have to go up for re-election, that's not the same thinking that they have.
That's true. I mean, that was my first reaction when I saw, Orrin Hatch says it doesn't matter. Well, Orrin Hatch doesn't matter. In a couple of days, we'll never hear from him again.
Yeah.
So that's true.
The opposite of Flake. Flake leaves and says it matters. Hatch leaves and says it doesn't matter.
Okay. Well, they go out on opposite sides on that one. Okay. Well, all right. So we'll come back in 2 minutes and give it a shot at wrapping up on a few other points. Other things did happen. We'll get to those after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Our 2 minutes have passed. All right, let's see what we can wrap up with. Still plenty of stories. I'm just looking at Pocket, and it's crazy. I can't even pull a theme out of this, except that there are too many themes, I guess. All right.
Well, there's always that.
Yes.
So Ron Brownstein had another piece that he put up on CNN, which is entitled "The Foundation of Trump's Coalition is Cracking."
All right.
All right, and it makes a point that we have made here many, many, many times. Okay. His base isn't white people, it's white evangelicals.
Ah, that is different.
If you look at who voted for whom in the 2018 midterm, okay, Democrats regained ground in 2018 among working class whites who are not evangelicals. For non-evangelicals, non-college, it was 44% of the men voted for Democrats, 53% Republicans. For women, it was 57% Democrats and 41% Republicans. So non-evangelical, non-college women, white voters, went for Democrats. The women went for Democrats.
College. Okay. Yes.
Okay. And the men, it was like a 9-point lead for Republicans, which isn't all that much. College side, whites, men voted for Democrats 59-37 if you were non-evangelical. Women voted 71-27 for Democrats if you were non-evangelical.
Okay.
But across all the categories, men, women, college, non-college, it's basically 20% Democrat, 80% Republican. Pretty solid.
Yes.
If you want to know whether or not you're a Trump supporter, just ask, are you evangelical?
That will probably answer the question.
80% chance. So the point there is that that's his base. That's why they don't change. That's why none of this matters. If you think of them as the old Ralph Reed religious right, well, of course you're not going to convince those folks. Of course it's a waste of time trying to convert them. Of course, or recruit them or in any way, shape, or form approach them. They are lost. These are people you have to beat. These are not people that you have to get onto your side in regard to voting. But if you think of them as Ralph Reed, religious right conservatives, then you know exactly how to approach them. Rather than saying, oh, it's the Trump base, which is kind of an amorphous, meaningless thing that doesn't really give you a sense of what's going on.
Yes, that's true. I guess the only question is why they're his base, but...
that's easy.
Yeah.
Power.
I guess.
He is their champion. They don't care if he's a flawed vessel or not. Everybody else has deserted them. They've lost everything else, every other election. And if he is not their champion and loses, then they haven't, tried hard enough. If he's their champion and loses, at least they, again, like Orrin Hatch, they go down with their ship. They threw everything out there. They did everything they possibly could. Now it's up to somebody else. I won't get into who that is.
Okay, I guess.
Not with them. But they're not going to budge. They want the most conservative judges. They want Roe v. Wade overturned. They want a hierarchical structure where men are in charge and women stay home. And the funny thing is, as this article points out, is that particular evangelical base is shrinking.
Okay.
What's happening is that the younger evangelicals don't like the exclusionary parts of it. They don't like the fact that they're excluding gays, that are excluding blacks, they're excluding people of color, they're excluding women, they're excluding this, they're excluding that. And so they tend to, they're the ones that tend to think about voting Democratic. What that leaves them with is a much more homogeneous, older group, which votes in lockstep. And that's why the numbers look the way they do. That's how come it doesn't matter what within evangelical, demographic you look at, you always get the same numbers, because these are the old white guys that are left when everybody else leaves them.
I guess, and I guess when questions occur to me, like why do old school, older evangelicals, for instance, feel uncomfortable having common cause with? Well, we earlier mentioned the shrugging guy, Orrin Hatch. Like, how do older evangelicals feel about Mormons? I guess, like, if they can have Donald Trump be their champion, then they can make common cause with Mormons. They don't care.
Right. As the important thing is so that it's not Hillary Clinton or the Democrats. To start, this analysis underscores how many white working class voters are also evangelical Christians. Nationwide, the exit poll found that evangelical Christians this year comprised fully 45% of all white voters without a college degree.
Okay.
That is a substantial proportion of the total electorate. Evangelicals represented only 1/4 of college-educated white voters.
What would happen if we sent evangelicals to college?
Depends what college.
I mean,
Jerry Falwell
that's
scholars?
true. Right, I guess that doesn't matter. That only reinforces things. What about Pat Robertson's college?
Yeah, exactly. In all the southern states where the question was asked this year, evangelicals represented a majority of working-class white voters, including fully 2/3 in Georgia and Tennessee. So the Georgia election results that we got were actually pretty darn good.
Yes.
Stacey Abrams almost winning, but not quite.
Gotcha.
Evangelicals, and that's why Phil Bredesen really didn't have much of a chance in Tennessee. Evangelicals are also a majority of white working-class voters in West Virginia and, wait for it, Indiana, and half in Missouri.
Indiana?
Yeah.
That was one of those states.
So Joe Donnelly and Claire McCaskill losing had a lot to do with how the evangelicals voted. That's a big hill for Democrats in those states because the exit poll results show they face virtually monolithic opposition from all segments of the evangelical community.
Okay.
right? So, it may be that it takes something. It's what people used to say about Kansas.
What did they say? What's the matter
Democrats
with Kansas?
can't win, but Republicans can lose.
I see.
And so every once in a while you elect somebody from Kansas who is a Democrat, and that's what happens.
Okay.
You run a Chris Kobach or, somebody who can't win, and then the Democrat wins. But in a natural election where you have two equal candidates of equal quality from both sides, the Republican's going to win. That's Indiana and North Dakota and probably Missouri these days.
How odd then that they keep. That's funny. Is that the evangelical community is the ones that keep insisting in the primaries that you absolutely not run two candidates of equal quality.
Yeah, and that's why the Democrats keep having chances.
That's pretty good. That's a great ideology. What an awesome religion. I love it. I should donate.
Right. In House races, the exit polls found that exactly 3/4 of white evangelicals without a college degree voted Republican, while only about a fifth supported Democrats. Democrats lost the men in this group by 57 points, and they lost the women by 49 points. So the collapse of any meaningful distinctions among evangelicals reflects both their hardening loyalty to the GOP and the contraction of their overall numbers, says Robert P. Jones, Chief Executive Officer of the Public Religion Research Institute, PRRI, a poll I often refer to. That's a nonpartisan group that studies religion, values, and politics. In PRRI surveys, evangelical Christians have declined from about 21% of the total population in 2008 to 15% this year. That erosion has been asymmetrical, with younger and better educated members becoming the most likely to leave the faith. That's left behind a group that is older and more uniformly conservative. That's what we were saying here. So as the group is shrinking and aging, it's just becoming more and more homogeneous. When you have that kind of attrition and it's coming from all the younger end, the low end is more likely to be college educated. The low end is more likely to be more liberal on the whole range of cultural issues and less anti-immigrant. And then you start losing the differences and you're left with a homogeneous block that votes one way. And that's who Trump plays to all the time.
I wonder if we could break that up by telling them that they're homogeneous and see what they think that means.
That's right. Whether conversion therapy would get them out of their homogeneity.
If it gets us a chance to, use electric shocks on them at all, I'd be interested.
I have a feeling that's exactly what Mike Pence was thinking about the entire time that Trump was talking.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah. So there's that, and just realize that particular block of people are not worth your time trying to recruit to your side. But a different story among non-evangelical white voters.
Non-evangelical white voters. Okay.
Pressing reasons for Republican concern about white voters who are not evangelicals, both those with and without college degrees. Although Democrats this year posted their best recent showing among white voters holding at least a 4-year college degree, the GOP's continuing strength among such well-educated white evangelicals obscured the full extent of the party's decline. In the National House exit poll, Democrats carried fully 2/3 of college-educated whites that are not evangelical Christians. And that included not only a head-turning 71% of college-educated white women who are not evangelicals, and also 59% of the men. The shares that said they disapproved of Trump's performance are even higher in both groups. 74% of the women and 63% of the men who were not evangelicals, who were white, did not like Trump.
Okay.
So religion isn't the only explanation, but it's a big part of it. And all of this suggests continuing limits on the potential inroads for Democrats among working-class white voters, evangelical or not, particularly with Trump appealing so directly to the cultural priorities and resentments. But the results also point to openings for some Democratic improvement in 2020 compared to 2016, at least in northern states where fewer of the blue-collar whites are evangelical Christians. So a Midwest strategy may work. That very same strategy may not work in places like Georgia or Mississippi. And we saw that in the recent elections where a Mike Espy or a Stacey Abrams could not get the suburban vote in the same manner that Democrats were successfully able to earlier in November because they're different constituencies here. so many are evangelicals, the same appeals didn't work the same way.
Okay.
Thinking about it that way just really helps clarify what it is we're trying to do. Why do you keep saying that there are people that, we shouldn't, why don't we just gin up our own base and ignore theirs? We should ignore the evangelical part of their base, but we should not ignore the non-evangelical people who voted Trump, who may in fact feel bad about it and want to vote differently.
Okay. Are you just saying not all white people then?
I suppose.
Okay. Well, all right. That's easy enough. This could be the title of your book. Do you have a catchy name for the demographic group that we're targeting?
Well, Soccer Moms is taken, so I guess we can't do that.
A non-evangelical white, but non-college.
Yeah, I suppose we can call them normal people.
Oh. Well, people will get upset about that.
Regular voters.
Yeah, well, we got to come up with a catchy phrase. You can't just say that. That'll always get everybody upset. But something moms or something dads, or maybe it doesn't have to be attached to parenthood necessarily. I don't know. But we'll have to work on that. That's how you catch attention.
If you think that they'll get upset about that, how upset are they going to get if you say basically what we're left with is an aging, more conservative, more radical evangelical core who is absolutely, positively not reachable, and you should ignore them.
Okay.
They are not. Well, they matter for individual races.
How do we write the opposite?
But that's going to be true less and less and less as we go on, and they are going to lose.
Okay.
And in fact, they're going to lose faster because they're, like Orrin Hatch, going to lash themselves to Donald Trump, and when he goes down, they're going to go down with him.
Okay.
I'm glad to hear it happen. That's stuff we have to look forward to.
All right. Well, we'll just work on the snappy name. We got a couple of years, I think.
Yeah, we do.
I think primaries are tomorrow.
Right. So let me just end with this other piece. This is Josh Kraushaar, and this comes from Representative Tom Emmer of Minnesota, who is now the National Republican Congressional Committee chair.
Okay, good luck.
He got there because a more qualified woman was pushed aside by him and by Kevin McCarthy, who's now the minority leader.
Okay. Who was that woman?
I will
exactly.
I don't know. There's actually two or three.
I'm genuinely don't know.
But he convinced them not to run against this guy so that Kevin McCarthy's handpicked person can be put there, and they didn't want to have a Republicans in disarray kind of story. So Tom Emmer is now the newly minted chair.
Okay.
Surveying a midterm landscape where his party lost 40 seats, nearly all of them in suburban or urban districts, Emmer proclaimed there was no political realignment in the suburbs. It's not true. It's just not there. And he went on to say that, Trump had nothing to do with the losses and that they didn't have to do anything different, basically.
Oh. Wow.
Emmer's comments are a sign that Republicans are delusional about the 2018 election results, a midterm that was defined by voters' views of the Trump presidency, or they have no better options than to stick with a president who has swiftly transformed the Republican Party and his image. There's a reasonable strategic case for House Republicans to own their Trump base, maintaining the seats they have and hoping to win back some of the losses. But House Republicans should be clear-eyed that such a strategy merely stops the political bleeding isn't the formula to win back the majority in 2020.
Okay. Where is this article? I'm just trying to follow along with you, but
that one was in the Pundit Roundup, but let me give it to you.
I've got that open. I'm trying to scroll for. Okay, yeah. Why don't you put that
GOP
aside?
Suburban Delusion. It's called right there.
There we go. All right. Well, it sounds like a really easy job being the head of the National Republican Congressional Committee. All you have to do is say we didn't do anything wrong and we won't change anything. That's a job I could probably get. I don't know how to engineer it and who they were pushing aside for it, but
looks like Elise Stefanik.
Okay. Well, I guess that was probably an easy job.
Here's a piece from The Hill. Representative Elise Stefanik, Republican New York, is firing back at the incoming chairman of the House GOP's campaign arm after he dismissed her calls to get involved in primary races to help more Republican women get elected to Congress. Newsflash, I wasn't asking him for permission. Tweeted Stefanik, who led candidate recruitment efforts for the NRCC this year.
Sorry.
Stefanik's tweet was in response to Representative Tom Ehrer, the newly elected NRCC chairman, telling Roll Call it would be a mistake for Stefanik to intervene in primaries because the GOP doesn't do that.
Okay, sure.
Okay. So that was the inter-party feud, and there was a widening gender gap, and the women in the Republican Party were very concerned that there were less and less women, and they got clobbered in the suburbs, and they actually wanted to make kind of what you might call a suburban caucus to focus on this.
Yeah.
And they said, nope, we don't need you. We're going to get a less qualified man to run this and shut up.
Is Emmer evangelical?
I don't know.
I should check that out. Is there a registry of some kind?
I don't know. He's from Minnesota, so maybe he's a Confederate.
These days, why not? Yeah, he's probably
just like
Confederate
Corey
flag
Stewart
on his
was.
truck. Sure. There's no reason why he couldn't be. That's interesting. And, I don't know what to tell you, but the message here is they don't want you. Women, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So that just kind of emphasizes that. So again, things are actually looking pretty good. Now, why would you want a strong woman in a position of leadership? Well, let's go back to where we started from. Watch what Nancy Pelosi did yesterday. It works. It works very well.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm curious about why they. Emmer just pushed her aside because he wanted to have that position, and that's all that really matters. I don't know whether he has any serious strategy about it. Clearly not. I don't know what to do. Nothing. Don't change anything. That's a hell of a job. Okay. Well, I don't know. I guess so. They even have abandoned the pretense that they had last clobbering for an autopsy. That didn't. Not that it lasted more than 2 weeks anyway. But hey, whatever happened to the guy that ran that autopsy anyway?
Wasn't that the Michael Steele? He's the one that has great admiration for or Reince Priebus.
Yeah, I'm not sure which. Yeah, I'm not sure which of them ran the autopsy. I can't recall whether that was post Steele and became Priebus. And Priebus was a Wisconsin guy, and all the Wisconsin people just got swept out too. That's,
right.
Yeah, bad news for Wisconsin Republicans. You really sunk the standing of your state there.
Right. Exactly.
Well, very good. Thank you. That'll. I assume that. Did you want to sneak in a mention of that terrible article?
Oh, I was. Just the headline is so good because there's been such great analysis of how Democrats are positioning themselves in regard to Jerry Nadler being head of judiciary and being careful about whether or not you consider impeachment. And having Robert Mueller and the Sovereign District of New York putting out such great material about how corrupt the Trump crime family is. So Megan McArdle weighed in with this great headline: who's most at risk from the Russia investigation? It just might be the Democrats.
Ah, yes. That's so crazy. It just might work.
Exactly. Because although impeachment proceedings might be dangerous for Senate Republicans, it might be forced to choose as to what to do, the law versus their own political careers. But what if Trump is innocent?
Yeah.
The greatest danger may be the one facing Democrats, she writes. The investigations end up with not quite enough evidence to justify impeachment, and the Democrats nonetheless go ahead and impeach Trump anyway.
Right.
What if that happens?
What if that happens?
What if the Mueller investigation ends without a credible direct link between the president and Russian interference in the 2016 election? The Democratic base would still clamor to impeach him over the campaign finance violations. And if the activists clamor loud enough, impeachment may well happen because nobody in the Democratic caucus wants to be the one who breaks the bad news to them. Did you not see Nancy Pelosi's performance yesterday? She is perfectly capable of saying, we don't have enough here. We're not doing this.
What if Republicans lost the statewide elections in Michigan and Wisconsin and their activists clamored nonetheless to try to strip the incoming Democratic governor and attorneys general of their powers? What if that happened? Would that be Republicans at the greatest risk in that sense?
No, of course it would be Democrats because it's always Democrats.
Yeah.
And the other thing that she highlights, because she always highlights and everyone highlights, is what if this turns out to be a replay of the Clinton impeachment?
Yeah.
Except they're completely different. But other than that, what if they were the same?
Right.
And then she ends it, yeah, it's a lot of ifs all strung, and nobody, and none of them can really be resolved until Mueller speaks. But the only thing that's certain right now is the next year is going to be one of the uglier, angrier entries in the annals of American history. Well, why don't you try paying attention to the news so that you know exactly what's going on? This whole thing, what was getting me mad yesterday is I was watching MSNBC, and because there was also the whole discussion about how Nick Ayers was probably the smartest guy in the White House because he didn't want to work for Trump, and therefore they didn't have a chief of staff. Yes. And they didn't have a plan B when this guy turned them down. So they had a whole string of ex-chiefs of staff on to analyze the situation.
Oh.
They had Andy Card, they had Leon Panetta, they had Mac McClarty, and it was just awful. These guys are such terrible analysts because their whole position that they start from is complete and total deference to the President of the United States. Well, the chief of staff has to be subordinate, and you have to understand you have to get somebody who can work with the president. That's really the top thing. And remember, the chief of staff is the staff, not the chief. And I'm listening to all this garbage and dreck and saying, if you show deference to the president, you're not capable of analyzing what's going on with Donald Trump right now. Why are you even on?
Well, they were talking about in normal times, I guess.
Yes, and this is not normal times. It's got nothing to do with what's going on right now. That would have been true 10 years ago. Maybe, hopefully, it'll be true 10 years from now, but it's got nothing to do with what's going on right now. And it's infuriating to hear these experienced, very serious people talk about how it's really important that the chief of staff get along with the president because the guy is a crook. And he's a traitor, and he's the member of a crime family. And how is the chief of staff supposed to deal with that? Because he's likely to be impeached the way things are going.
Yes.
That's the way you should be
manage
presenting
things. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't know what else they think. I don't know if they know anything else.
It's not a Harvard Business School management course, for goodness sake.
Everything is a Harvard Business
Mitt
School.
Romney might put it.
For crying out loud.
For crying out, heavens to Betsy. This is a little bit more than just how does the chief of staff manage personnel in the White House.
All right. Well, I guess it's sort of
You've
like a box
Ivanka,
explainer
and
of
you've
what is
got,
a chief of staff.
The son-in-law there, Jared, who basically don't have any rules apply to them. So you have the princess and the consort, drone, wind up breaking all the rules that a chief of staff would do. That's what you should be talking about.
That's probably
and
true.
By the way, how does a chief of staff salvage their own reputation when they happen to be working for a crime boss who's going to go up the river, if not now, then after he leaves office?
So this is the one place where LOL YOLO nothing matters is the legitimate analysis.
Yeah, I suppose.
I guess. Why are you asking me? I appreciate that you had me on. You don't need a chief of staff from a former White House to tell you this, but there's nobody that can do this job ever, period. Even literally, if he even put Ivanka in it, he would end up disowning Ivanka. He can't be done. Which is a good idea, by the way.
I appreciate that you have me on. Thank you for asking. But I think the guy you really needed to have here is the former director of Sing Sing, who could tell you a little bit about how things are really going to go over the next 10 years.
Yes, right. Okay. Either that or maybe a dog obedience school owner, something like that, perhaps. I don't know. All right. Well, that's a good point. So next person on the chopping block. I guess that's a fun guessing game. Who will be ruined next? But other than that,
right. Oh, by the way, the reporters are really annoyed at this whole Nancy and Chuck show yesterday because it's very hard to make the case that the president is now going to pivot to bilateral negotiations, which is something that he'll simply have to. Well, not after what you saw yesterday. There ain't no pivot. Will you get that through your thick heads? There is no pivot.
And so they're trying to insist that there must be one.
Yeah, before it started.
Oh,
we're about to see the dawn of a new era where now Donald Trump will just show us his skills in dealing with a bipartisan Congress. No.
Well, I mean, sorry.
That wasn't going to happen. And by the way, that's not what we just saw.
No, that's certainly true. What is it? Are they still mad, or are they having a good time talking about what a trouncing
I wish they'd have a better time. I was saying the other day, I would love for a reporter to actually go up to Orrin Hatch after that part about, Southern, whatever they claim, I really don't care. He's a good president. I just want a reporter to go up to Orrin Hatch and say, but Senator, what you just said is complete bullshit, and it doesn't make any sense at all.
Oh, and then what? Just walk away?
That's what I want to see. What's the then what?
And then
what
if two of you
do
it
that?
In harmony.
Nobody ever says that to them.
Yes. Well, that's and there's no risk in doing it at this point, right? You might as well.
I mean, what do you got? YOLO. You talk about YOLO. Now is the time.
Yeah, I guess
That's where
so.
you should be seeing this.
All right.
Excuse me, Senator. Nothing really matters. Let me just ask you, how can you spout this crap after everything we've just learned?
That'd be a good.
How do you sleep at night saying stuff like this? Our readers and our listeners want to know.
Let me get my reading glasses. Oh, they're not on my face. All right. Well, time for you to go, I guess. And time for you. I guess it's probably time for you to go. I know. Yeah, I've kept you too long. Okay. Well, thanks, Greg. I appreciate it. Good. I'm glad you did. And let's see. We'll have you again tomorrow, right? Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Tomorrow's Thursday, so I'll be back.
Good
and
news
say hi to
for
Joan,
John
and let's
McCain.
see who else you have on. If Armando's on, and I don't know what you were saying he might come on for, but whatever it is, I'm sure I was wrong about something.
He's got a phone. That's
yeah.
So, all right.
He's got a phone. He's got an opinion. Why shouldn't he be on?
Right.
Take care, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Very good. You do the same. We'll see you then. Wow, that takes up. I don't have to do anything. My job is done here, except for I have to press the buttons to make sure the music comes in. And all right, so let's see. We will comb over the rest of the news when we return after our brief 1-minute break here. Try and regroup and try and pick some kind of a theme. Decide what's in and what's out in the next hour, and of course we'll get a chance to talk with Joan McCarter in the next hour too. Stay tuned. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. Why not kick things off with my comment I happen to have here in my hand here from Gideon, who was asking, not sure why the Trump meeting from yesterday is being lauded. Trump has had disagreements with Schumer before. Nothing happened as a result. I would answer that by saying words to you. And then we would be done with that. No, I was going to say, I would answer this by saying Schumer was second fiddle in this game. This was, I think the lauding is for Nancy Pelosi. I don't think Schumer's performance was particularly good in that meeting. And if it were just him, I wouldn't necessarily be terribly excited about what happened there, and I don't get terribly excited about anything that happens, quite honestly. But she did a lot better than he did, though he did get credit, I think, properly for baiting Trump into just blurting out that he was going to shut down the government no matter what, and he liked the idea, and he was proud to do it, and et cetera, and to say, and to get him to say, it was really ridiculous. It reminded me immediately of like the old Bugs Bunny cartoon, the Wabbit season, duck season thing. And it, more than anything else, where he gets Trump, either that or the other comparison was to A Few Good Men, you're goddamn right, I ordered the code red, that one. What Schumer's best part in all this was, aside from annoying Trump by talking to the cameras and not to him, which I'm sure infuriated him, was baiting Trump into saying, I'll shut down the government, I'll be proud to do it, and I'll take the blame for it. I won't blame you for it. I'll take the mantle. So by all reports, had his aides and Capitol Hill folks on the Republican side just slapping their foreheads like, oh my God, the whole idea, I think the whole point of having this discussion be in front of the cameras was to lay the blame on them. And Chuck Schumer, I don't know whether it was a grand plan or it just happened, but managed to either to goad Trump into making this mistake, or it's just that it was Chuck Schumer's words that happened to be hanging in the air when Trump finally couldn't take it anymore and blurted it out. But that's the best thing I think that came out of it from Schumer. I think the meeting is being lauded chiefly for what Pelosi had to say, and it was her laying down the law of reality to him. Look, you don't have the votes to get this thing done, so you're getting zero, period. Now, if you want to shut down the government because Democrats won't fund your biggest and dumbest priority, I guess you can do that. But now that you've said you're doing it and it's your fault and not ours, we don't have much more to discuss here. That's it. And so that was interesting. Now, Trump, by the way, had just the smallest germ of a point in the full discussion there about whether or not to have the votes. He was saying, I would have, well, it was his contention that he could get the votes right now in the Republican House to pass funding for the wall, but for the fact that House Republicans knew that the vote would all be for naught because it would be blocked in the Senate, where you would not be able to get to a final vote because you couldn't get 60 votes for cloture on a bill that funded the wall. I'm not even really sure that that's true. I think your chances are probably better in the Senate than you think, but I still don't think it's going to be enough. And I guess that you could probably get it from retiring Republicans and Republicans who would think of the wall funding vote as a freebie and or a messaging vote. I don't really know exactly. I'm not sure what Nancy Pelosi is talking about exactly in this one. I'm not so sure that you couldn't get the votes to pass funding for the wall in the House right now. I don't know. I'm not certain. It wasn't clear to me if that's what she was saying or whether she was hinting at something else exactly. But, if it's a straight up question of whether or not a House comprised of a majority of Republicans, many of whom are leaving office now, if the question is, could you get a majority of that House to vote for funding for the wall in an appropriations bill, I don't see why the answer is no on that one. But anyway, to answer your question, Gideon, I think most of the discussion of the meeting was about Pelosi and her performance there and how they got Trump sputtering more so than anything about Schumer. I don't think anybody came away with any great feelings necessarily about what he did there, except Schumer himself. He was probably pretty proud of himself. All right, let's see. There are literally millions of directions to go in the next hour, but keeping the decks clear for Joan, there's a couple of things that I can bring up that have nothing to do with anything, but are fun and perhaps ought to be shared regardless, including one that was so weird and crazy that it motivated me to change my Twitter display handle. I still don't know exactly what's the terminology for distinguishing between the @ address that you keep and is permanent and the display name that you put up there. But you may have noticed this morning that in addition to having changed over to Twitter, first from David Waldman to David Waldman LLC, and then to David Waldman LLC trademark, then now Tweeter One LLC, and now Anonymous Tweeter One. I am now the musical director for Anonymous Tweeter One LLC trademark. What's that all about? If you missed the biggest story of the day, in my opinion, it is not that. But in my opinion, no. Bloomberg Law reporting this one. BloombergLaw.com has this blockbuster story. UN musical director charged in charity embezzlement scheme. And I'm scratching my head over this, like, what does UN stand for? Because it can't possibly be the United Nations, because there's no way the United Nations has a musical director. Well, they don't now. But they did. And now they need a new one, I guess. And I would love to have this job. I am not musical per se, and I don't know how to direct anything. But what's the goddamn difference? This is how I would pitch this thing. I don't know what you're paying him, but I'll take half, and I promise you I'll never embezzle anything. Although maybe they weren't paying him at all, and he had to embezzle in order to compensate for his time. I don't know. UN musical director. What do you do? Do they play you off at the General Assembly if you go too long? Where does it even enter into United Nations activity at all? Well, okay. I mean, this is a real story. David McAfee is allegedly a real person reporting at Bloomberg Law, allegedly a real outlet. UN musical director charged in charity embezzlement scheme. A Southern California man, and so not only is the UN musical director a job, but you can do it remotely, which is amazing. A Southern California man who served as a musical director for the United Nations was arrested for his alleged role in a scheme to embezzle $750,000 from a charity concert benefiting homeless children. Robin DiMaggio, a professional drummer from Woodland Hills, who, by the way, also famous because he served as musical director for the Arsenio Hall TV show. I believe that was on television before Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was born. It may have been. That was a joke, but I don't know. I don't think so. Anyway, he was arrested Friday afternoon and charged with felony wire fraud. Prosecutors announced on December 10th he allegedly used the Peace for You, Peace for Me Foundation's money to ... Well, I can't tell you because Bloomberg Law is a subscription publication, and I don't have a subscription, but I just thought I would start off at least by telling you that that was the case. I wonder if maybe is anybody else picking up this exclusive story about Robin DiMaggio? CBS News has something. Oh, and Newsweek. What should I go with? I got it. NBC, CBS, Newsweek. There's a Wikipedia article on the guy. Deadline.com. I don't know where to go for this one. How about we'll go to the NBC News one because reasons. Well, you know what? Let's go to Newsweek. Who is Robin DiMaggio? Former UN musical director, allegedly embezzled $750,000. Was that, and by the way, is the foundation at all connected to the UN, or was the UN gig completely separate? Anyway, he was arrested Friday. Single felony charge, wire fraud, carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, which is pretty serious. The drummer was released on $40,000 bond and must wear a tracking device until a preliminary hearing and arraignment next month in U.S. District Court in Los Angeles, according to NBC. See, I should have just gone there. And I'm reading Newsweek telling me what NBC had to say. Prosecutors said the 47-year-old was wired the sum after agreeing to help the Peace for You, Peace for Me Foundation organize a charity event in Bulgaria. So, interesting. So, homeless people in Bulgaria? Is that what we're talking about? I mean, I assume there are homeless people in Bulgaria, but it's not top of mind for me. But I guess, Robin's on it. He's a nice guy, except he was trying to steal their money. Maybe he doesn't think that's legit. There's no homeless people here in Bulgaria. I should keep this money. DiMaggio reportedly used the funds to pay for personal expenses. What funds? I mean, they wired the sum after agreeing to help organize it. Well, I mean, does that mean he thought, did they think he was doing it unpaid and they were just sending him money to help organize? Like, what? I don't even understand. Where's this charity based? And he's in Los Angeles, and he's like, I got to organize an event in Bulgaria. Well, we'll send you some money. Well, I guess you could say, well, send it to Bulgaria. I'll go there and do the work. But I guess if you sent him money, and he said, I'll help you organize it, and you send him money, of course he would use it to pay for personal expenses. I don't know. Anyway, the personal expenses included purchasing cars, which is kind of a normal thing to do if you think you're just getting paid, and to service some of his credit card debts instead of, he was supposed to use the money to recruit artists for the gig. He was supposed to pay other people. So what'd they send him? Prosecutors, CBS Los Angeles reported, Newsweek isn't doing any work on this, added that DiMaggio used $251,370 of the funds to buy his ex-wife a house in Calabasas, California, northwest of Los Angeles. In August 2016, he also reportedly wired $150,000 of the funds to a bank account in the name of his company, DeMagic Entertainment. I'm not certain that's a bad thing. None of the money he received was used to pay artists to perform at the charity concert, nor should that have been. Really, honestly, they should have done this for free. However, prosecutors said when the event's final sponsor asked for the funds back, DiMaggio sent an email stating he had deposited the money in the artist's accounts. All right, he's lying. As previously agreed. Well, that's bad. In December of 2016, the sponsor sued DiMaggio, who subsequently filed for bankruptcy. Court records show the financial sponsor was awarded $1.2 million summary judgment in bankruptcy court, but the judgment has not been formally entered by the court as of last week. DiMaggio, who according to records represented himself in court without an attorney, has rubbed shoulders with some of music's biggest stars over the last 3 decades. That's of some interest. You know who the biggest stars are. I don't have to tell you. He was, between 2013 and 14, he was the drummer and music director for Arsenio Hall's second, late night show, which ran on CBS for a single season. I see. He's not that famous. It wasn't from the original Arsenio Hall show, which was from 1840 or something like that. Anybody know the dates that actually ran? I mean, you're going to make me check this now? You know how we work on this show. I got to know the answer. Arsenio Hall show, and then we'll Wikipedia that and see if it gives us some numbers here. Let's see. So this is like the late 80s into the early 90s. Premiered in 1989, ran until 1994. So, literally, how many years ago is that? Well, now we have to go and check the other thing. Okay. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her Wikipedia entry. She was born on October 13th, 1989, which means that she was born 10 months into the run of the original Arsenio Hall show. Arsenio Hall was on the air literally before she was born, although he stayed on the air until about her 5th birthday or so, just before. So she was 4 years old when it originally went off the air. So I was kidding, but I was actually pretty close. I just wanted to make you all feel old, and welcome to it. So anyway, I guess there's hope, though, for all of us. If there's a UN musical director job, and then that guy would get that job. That's what I was hoping Newsweek was going to tell me. It was how do you find yourself in that job? I don't really know. I mean, so he was the drummer and music director for Arsenio Hall's second late night show. Not sure how you get that job, but at least that's a thing where I understand late night television shows have music directors. Then it says he also served as the music director for a number of United Nations events, which is the only way I can imagine him having something like that. Okay, we're going to have an event, there's an award show or some kind of benefit, and there's music at those things, and you'll be the director of that. But I guess they weren't paying him a whole lot, so maybe I shouldn't open my big mouth and take this job. It could be a real financial disaster for us if I were to take that job. Okay, on to other subjects here. Let's see. Update by way of listener Matthew Rigdon and frequent commenter Matthew Rigdon, who notes for us, I have no answer to this but to just put it out there. Still no sign of those Chinese microchips. Someone lied to Bloomberg. And there is a Reuters article attached here, for which I would have no response other than to say, I guess someone did. And now I'd be curious as to who lied to Bloomberg. Maybe they were distracted by the sideline gig of having to report on the music director for the UN. That's an excuse for getting the article wrong, but it doesn't tell us how this happened. This is the updated information. Supermicro, remember them? Says a review found no malicious chips in their motherboards after all. Joseph Min, writing this for Reuters. Computer hardware maker Supermicro Computer Incorporated told customers on Tuesday, that they had the most creative name in the business, that an outside investigations firm, and I guess you could question who is that and what are their qualifications? Had found no evidence of any malicious hardware in its current or older model motherboards. In a letter to customers, the San Jose, California company said it was not surprised by the result of the review it commissioned in October after a Bloomberg article reported that spies for the Chinese government had tainted Supermicro equipment to eavesdrop on its clients. Supermicro had denied the allegations made in the report. A person familiar with the analysis told Reuters it had been conducted by a global firm, Nardello and Company. I'll believe that they're, real and reputable. Why not? And that customers could ask for more detail on that company's findings. Nardello tested samples of motherboards in current production and versions that were sold to Apple Incorporated and Amazon.com Incorporated, which were both named in the article, the person said. It also examined software and design files without finding any unauthorized components or signals being sent out. He said the company was still reviewing its legal options. Amazon, Apple, and U.S. and U.K. officials have all said they have no knowledge of any hardware attacks via Supermicro. So, I don't have anything else to add to that, and there's no articles in response to that. I don't know whether Bloomberg will revise or will do some more reporting, but I guess that leaves us standing there saying, yeah, so maybe I guess that whole thing it was a scary idea. It might be a fantastic science fiction novel someday. And I don't doubt that it's actually possible. It does, I think, reveal a worry that should be on your mind when it comes to buying technology and technology components from China. It's a serious issue, and China is on a real binge in its internal surveillance and security, are boosting its internal surveillance and security state and its capabilities. But that's not the same thing as saying they're doing it internationally, though there'd be a tremendous incentive for doing so. Well, that's it. That's A. I don't know if I have a B on that one. I would watch for it. I'd keep my eyes open. They've done us a good service in warning us, but the format they chose to warn us with could get them in a little bit of trouble. But thank you for bringing us the update. Just going to have to lay it out there and say, well, could have heard some fake news there, and we're sorry about that. It was an exciting and interesting story. And we'll keep an eye on it and see whether we find anything else out. Let's see. There is an update from Joe Bruno on North Carolina 9. He was tweeting out yesterday a short burst of tweets exclusive. He says, I've obtained a new affidavit about McCrae Dowless. A man says during the campaign he saw McCrae Dowless with a large number of ballots. He says Dowless told him that he had over 800. So that is pretty interesting, considering, of course, that the margin in the entire race was 905. And 905 is over 800. And people are talking more and more about having a new race held in North Carolina 09, and it bothers me that this still continues to get coverage as the only fair thing to do. To me, it's I think my preference is obviously for simply finding a way to invalidate 906 votes that were allegedly originally cast for Harris, and then just declaring McCready the winner. But I'm not certain that they have the numbers that they need to do that. But what was he doing with those 800 ballots? Joe continues on here. When asked why Dowless didn't turn in the ballots, according to the affidavit, Dowless said, "You don't do that until the last day because the opposition would know how many votes they had to make up." So I'm not certain whether that's an excuse for not turning in ballots that he knew to be cast for Democrats, or whether that was supposed to be an excuse for why he was holding ballots and that may have been cast, or votes that had been cast for Harris, or what. I'm not certain what he was trying to cover up there. Bruno concludes here, the affidavit was made by a registered Republican The conversation took place at a Republican meeting in Dublin, Bladen County. Live report at 6, that would have been yesterday. Lots breaking with NC09, according to the folks there at WSOC TV. Maybe I should check in on Bruno this morning and see if he's got more or links to a more thorough follow-up story. Let's see. Also circulating today, a photo someone found, a photo of Mark Harris and what's his name, Dowless, together, which I gather means that someone was alleging that they had never met, and yet here was photo evidence that they had. Okay, so, let's see. This looks like perhaps a story that he may have put together based on that tweet storm. Is there an actual link, or is this a Twitter moment? That usually never helps me. Let's see. No, this goes all the way back to December 5th. So, all right, still waiting on exactly what developments will bring us on North Carolina 9th District there. Other strange bits of news, tidbits of news, etc. Here's a bit of good news. Let me grab this one here. It's an Associated Press piece picked up by NBC News. Jury recommends life in prison plus 419 years. That's a long time. For Charlottesville driver, do we say the guy's name? Or do we just say he's the guy that murdered Heather Heyer? And say, yeah, well, I guess they took that pretty seriously there in Charlottesville. Life in prison plus 419 years for this guy. I guess there's no two ways about that one. What do we say to that? I don't know. Bye. Good. I guess that's it. And do you need to know more about that? I don't think so. And 419 years makes it pretty tough to get out at this point. So I'm pleased to be able to note that, I suppose, a small bit of consolation for the families, I guess. Another strange story floating out there without too much connection to the other headlines we've already discussed. From the Washington Post, Mike DeBonis covering this strange story. Two key lawmakers, the incoming chairman of a House panel and the ranking Democratic senator directing the Interior Department's spending, said they are firmly opposed to rushing through any legislation that could pave the way for a Washington football team, the Washington Breadsticks Stadium, on federal land. How do you like that? Did you even know that was in the offing? I guess if you're a follower of the Breadsticks, you probably knew about that. Representative Betty McCollum of Minnesota, who will lead the Appropriations Subcommittee on Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies next year, spoke out after the Washington Post reported Friday on an effort by the team, D.C. officials, and congressional Republicans to insert language in a sweeping year-end spending bill that could clear a crucial obstacle to building a new facility on the site of the existing RFK Stadium. If you're not a Breadsticks follower, RFK was their previous home, and an aging stadium inside D.C., and then they built a new, one of the new modern stadiums that's got naming rights, right? They sold those to FedEx. It was FedEx Field, and the owner took them out there. That's in, Landover, Maryland, I think. And I guess they were looking to move back into D.C., which would probably be a good thing economically, although typically these days stadium deals don't work out because the municipalities or the states or wherever they're located end up paying extra money or giving away tax breaks in order to, quote-unquote, incentivize these businesses to stay where they actually are, even though they're very heavily identified with the current location. Teams do move. Wouldn't mind seeing this one go. But anyway, RFK Stadium, the old home of the Breadsticks, would be torn down and a new one put up in its place, I assume. And that puts it inside of the District of Columbia. And I guess it's actually federal land that RFK Stadium originally stood on. And they want it back again. And apparently that's a no-go with Democrats, not only because, it's federal land and you don't just kind of give that away, but actually they're just outright objecting to, your name, it's racist. That's not a really great incentive for us to do that. By the way, thought that was interesting. Just a little note. Did you note that Betty McCollum, chair of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Interior, Environment, and Related Agencies. I told you yesterday that there were the 12 appropriations bills, and that sometimes cabinet departments are paired up that way. You just heard it there. Interior and Environment, EPA and Interior. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, interrupting this little break to say thanks so much to all of you who are contributing supporters of Kagro in the Morning. Thousands of you are downloading the show each day, but fewer than 1 in 25 regular listeners are donating to help keep us on the air. For the money you'd spend on a single 3-minute iTunes song, we bring you 2 hours of great news and entertainment every day, 5 days a week. Patreon.com, Patreon.com makes it easy. You can find us there by searching Kagro X or David Waldman or Kagro in the Morning or even Daily Coast Radio in their search box, and you'll be right where you need to be to make easy, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Once again, thanks so much for your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see, where to go after this. I think you've got the gist of the Washington breadsticks issues. Good call on the part of the Democrats involved there. No real reason to just blow past the idea of, oh yeah, sure, we should have a long-term lease of federal land for private profit. And especially not for people that are being stubborn about the idea of their name not being obviously racist. But okay, I think that would make things a little shaky, I guess, but you're certainly on you're on good ideological ground, legally speaking, and whether or not breadsticks fans were going to be on your side about that, I don't know. But the idea of the federal lease might convince some of them anyway. All right, Joan McCarter, good morning. Good to hear from you again. Glad you were able to stop by.
Good morning.
What the hell is going on? God damn it.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. Well.
I just finished a post on the shocked Republicans who can't believe Trump took the blame for the shutdown.
Well, well, I mean,
he's only been talking about shutting down government since the campaign.
Yes. Well, yeah, sure, even longer.
Since like 2015.
Yeah, they constantly and Republicans are constantly threatening it and constantly saying it would be a great idea. I don't know why. Well, I guess this is just another case of him saying the quiet part out loud, essentially.
Not really. This is Trump saying what he said all along. Yeah. I want a government shutdown. I want a government shutdown. The only thing that's different, he said, okay, this time I'll take the blame.
Wow.
Okay.
Does he think that's like a snow day?
Why they're all suddenly surprised that it's come to this? They haven't been paying a whole lot of attention.
I guess not.
One Republican told Politico, this is just amazing to me. It was unbelievable. I literally couldn't believe a president of the United States was acting that crazy.
Are you American, sir?
He's a Republican member of Congress. Is he not paying any attention at all?
You've been applauding it the whole time. What are you talking about? Okay, yeah, I see. You got a real story there, Joan. That's
I have a real story. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I guess they thought that he was playing their usual game, which is you go around saying, oh, no, I don't want to shut down. Democrats are going to make me shut down the government by not funding America's priorities. And he just lost his mind. He never had it. And I don't know. I mean, I really do feel like it was like he was set up like Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, Wabbit season, duck season.
But not in his own head.
No, oh, well.
He's always thought that a shutdown is a good thing for him.
I guess.
He thinks it makes him... he says. He has said it's good for us politically.
Then I guess I better say yes. I guess is my next guess.
And what I love is that...
That's my verbal crutch, I guess.
Then you've got Thune saying, well, no, this will play out like it always plays out. They'll get the blame. What they're not getting is that it's not in Trump's mind blame for a government shutdown. It's credit for a government shutdown. He likes the idea. He wants it.
That is consistent with not normal.
No, it's not normal. It is, a tad crazy. What I don't think he realizes or doesn't care about, the people who are going to be hurt by it are Border Patrol people.
Yeah, that
Homeland Security. Those are the people who are going to have to work without pay.
Is there any discretion when it comes to declaring them essential personnel? I don't know what the procedure is. I know that you get paid or no, you don't get paid, but you have to come to work.
You have to come to work and you don't get paid.
Yeah. All right. So then
and
you
I
would say they're essential.
And I think that, TSA agents and border security are going to be pretty much considered essential personnel.
That's it. Yes. But it's great because America, I guess. And I'm sure they'll find if they go to the bars where there are Border Patrol people, they'll tell you why it's so awesome that they have to work for free, I guess. But, hey, if they complain, I would like to have that story.
I imagine we'll see that story.
All right. Because why would they need money right around the end of December anyway?
Right.
So, okay, that's Trump for you.
That's where we're at right now.
Okay, credit.
I don't really see how government doesn't shut down. I mean, he wants it.
I guess if the only way it doesn't shut down is overriding a veto of a CR, I guess.
Yeah.
How much time is there?
I don't think he's going to budge.
No.
Maybe this is what's behind the House leadership saying, Paul Ryan hasn't said anything. Paul Ryan's just checked out. He didn't watch the meeting, he said. He had no idea what happened yesterday. Oh, there was a meeting? But Kevin McCarthy has stepped up and he's leading.
Is he? All right.
Apparently they're going to try to have the vote. They say, oh, sure, we have the votes to pass our version of the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill that has his $5 billion in it.
Well, I was wondering
Problem
about
is,
that.
So far, 44 Republicans haven't shown up to work this week.
Oh, well, so that could be what she meant by you don't have the votes, meaning like, no, your guys are on vacation.
Literally, they're not here. 20 of them, were defeated.
Yes.
And they're still home licking their wounds. But the rest of them just, they don't need us. So he's going to have to get everybody to come back to D.C.
When is shutdown?
And he's going to have to convince them that they have to take this pointless vote because there's no way $5 billion gets through the Senate.
Yeah. Now, if they were here, presumably they're not afraid of the vote, especially if they've lost office already. So I was a little confused.
The thing is, they haven't passed it yet.
Okay.
They've had this bill out of committee ready to report for a while. Yeah. And haven't tried to bring it to the floor yet. Yeah. There's the thing, if you have the votes, you pass the bill in the House.
Trump's excuse was, because they don't think they have the votes in the Senate, they don't want to cast the votes in the House, but that's never stopped them on anything.
That's never stopped them. That's never stopped them.
If
Nancy Pelosi says the votes are not there, I think pretty clearly the votes are not there. As Greg said earlier, if you're going to be counting votes, the person you want to get the information from is Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, although I don't know how closely she monitors Republicans, but it's a better guess than theirs, almost assuredly.
I mean, yeah, sure, they could all band together and do this. There's the mess of them that, are not coming back, so what does it matter?
Mm-hmm.
They go ahead and vote for this pointless thing that's not going to pass the Senate. What about the people who are looking ahead 2 years?
Oh, yes. If there are any of them, they're not going to, well, I don't know. Maybe they think it's popular, I suppose. But when is the current shutdown deadline? When are we at now?
The 21st.
The 21st. So we're
the
talking
Friday
about,
before Christmas.
Yes, that's not a lot of time. So in terms of working days in Congress, we got today and tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And then
next week.
Yeah, if people showed up. And then next week, but of course that also only means Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, generally speaking. But when you're facing a shutdown, they'll throw in the Friday for free.
Yeah, since that's the day that they have to have
6
it done.
days. So interesting. So if they were to pass, so there's a bill that currently there's a Republican bill reported out that has money in it for the wall.
Yeah.
How much?
They've been working on getting the appropriations bills done.
Yeah. Any idea what
this one's completed in terms of committee. It hasn't been reported it hasn't been forwarded to the floor yet.
Okay. So I mean, they could
it's ready to go.
They could get it to the floor and have the vote.
It includes the $5 billion that Trump asked.
It has the 5. Okay. Yeah. Only 5 from Republicans. That's interesting. Okay. Because
that's what he said he wanted.
Yeah. I was reminded earlier in the show by Stephen Dennis saying there was at one point $25 billion on the table.
Yeah. And every now and then Trump pops up with 25.
Yeah. So. Okay. Well, so the numbers are interchangeable to him. He doesn't care.
Well, did you see what he did on Pentagon spending for 2020?
No.
In the middle of all of this.
Yeah.
He's saying, well, sure, we said at one point that $700 billion in 2020 for the Pentagon, but let's make it $750 billion.
Sure. And another 50. Yeah, he loves doing that.
Completely blowing out the budget. Completely blowing it out. So. Okay.
Well, yeah, the numbers of things like that, they don't matter to him. He increases as he goes on, every number.
Yes.
So that's not surprising. And although he got stuck on the number 10 yesterday, apparently there was Sesame Street must have been brought to us by the number 10 yesterday because he got there's 10 people. How many people? I can't find a chief of staff. Yes, I can. 10 people want it. More than 10. Whatever that number is. 10D1.
10 is also what he had in his head for how many senators, how many Democratic senators he needs.
That too. And 10 was also how many terrorists he caught at the border with his awesome security that has the wall but doesn't have the wall. So I'm waiting to find out where those terrorists are. We don't know what we did with them. But, okay, that happened, apparently. The kernel of truth at the bottom of that is apparently somebody has a statistic that says border security everywhere. Airports, Canada, Mexico. 10 times a day they find people who are on, entry ban lists or no-fly lists or something like that. We know those things are riddled with error as well.
I think you're giving him too much credit for not.
So,
I
think he heard 10.
I think you're giving him too much credit. I think probably
I don't want to give it to him.
That up out of thin air.
That could be. The White House's spin on it is, well, somebody told him about this 10 a day thing, but that's sort of a different category. But that he became confused. But then he became confused on every subject. 10 everything. 10 is the answer to all things. Okay.
10.
Right. So, yeah, it reminded me of Sesame Street. All the skits are about 10 today. 10 tiny turtles on the telephone.
It makes you want to go see what Fox was talking about yesterday.
Oh, yeah. And if they weren't talking about that, they'll start. Today's show is probably all about the 10 terrorists.
Yes.
So,
speaking of Fox,
yes.
Did you see that Hannity's been cleaning out his tweet threads?
I heard that he was doing it. Of course, I've never seen his tweet threads, But
Neither have I.
Right,
He's
I'm
not-
sure.
yeah,
You
I
got
just-
better things to do.
I don't need to follow Sean Hannity, but
No,
apparently
so-
he's cleaning things up, which is making people pretty paranoid about who's going to be the next chief of staff.
Oh. Well, as there's no ability to recover tweets that have been deleted. That does not happen. And that will never. Okay. So really, chief. Oh, I thought it was like he was going to get indicted or arrested or something. Not.
Well, that's a
made-
possibility too.
And it's funny. That's a open question. Coin toss in the Trump administration. Is this guy going to be arrested or become White House chief of
Indicted or
staff?
promoted.
I don't know. It's a good question. Well, that might be the direction he goes.
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, sure.
Because back with the Michael Cohen stuff, he was one of those people getting assistance from Cohen and covering things up, right?
Yeah. Right. That's
Yeah.
another good thing for his appointment. So far, I hadn't seen him named for that, but I saw yesterday when they were floating Rick Santorum, and then immediately, oh, here's a picture of Rick Santorum and Maria Butina.
Yes.
Oh, that's not good. What else have we got?
Well, the search for a chief of staff is going so swimmingly. There are so many people lining up to do it that they announced John Kelly is going to be there at least until the new year.
Ah, okay. He's got a lot of boxes to pack.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any idea what Sean Hannity is deleting? Like, what's bad if you want to be chief of staff?
No.
Because I have no...
I
unless
haven't seen any specifics about what his... I haven't
Okay.
looked,
All right.
frankly.
Well, fair enough. I wouldn't
I
either.
just noted
That's-
in passing that this was a funny
Gotcha.
thing that was going on.
Maybe he's deleting the they should execute Julian Assange tweets. I imagine. That's all I can think of.
I see that Armando asked us a question on Skype
Okay.
earlier. He wanted to know if DACA is any part of these negotiations. DACA is not any part of these negotiations.
Oh.
Apparently, it's a fight they've decided they will take up when they have the House majority.
All right.
Democrats.
Well, that makes more
So-
sense.
I'm not exactly thrilled with Schumer's decision that what they're going in with is $1.3 billion or the current level of funding for Homeland Security. He's gone to pains to say this is not for a wall. It's fencing, staffing, general border security. But he also keeps saying they've got money from last year that they haven't spent.
Okay.
Now here I am getting my numbers confused.
Oh.
They're going for, was it 1.6 or 1.3? That's their limit.
Oh, I don't know.
It's one of the two. And one of the two, I think it's 1.3, he says, they've already got in the coffers and that they haven't spent on anything. So why aren't they using that money? So my question is, why didn't Pelosi and Schumer go in with zero as their starting point for money, new money for Homeland Security? Zero.
That's true. Yeah, you got money you didn't use. That's a great, businessman kind of approach to things. I think.
Yeah. I think.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe
so
they're
there's
still
that.
not
But
ready to.
no, as of now, DACA is not part of the negotiations. Although some Senate Republicans are saying, "What about DACA? What about DACA? We'll give you DACA if you give us $5 billion."
Mm-hmm. I thought they
I
might.
don't think that that's going to go anywhere.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Well, there's not a whole lot of time to consider that.
There isn't.
And only a
and-
couple
and,
Republicans saying it doesn't mean much.
It's unfortunate.
I mean, I'd like to have it.
We need it. It would be a good thing to have. It will be a good thing for Nancy Pelosi to push really hard on next year.
Yeah.
It should have happened by now. And,
Right.
but coulda, woulda, shoulda.
I mean, I guess.
Shutdown fights that we've had all year could have gone better. And I don't like seeing it set aside.
Yeah.
However, it has been.
All right. I mean, I guess in order to do it, you would at this point have to say, well, I mean, I have to see it passed first
Yeah.
Or I have to see the language in this bill. And I don't know. I mean,
There's
no
a
time to do
possibility
it.
that Trump is going to be so crazy that Republicans will be willing to do anything. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, they're still shocked that he said, let's have a government shutdown and blame it on me. They're having a hard time keeping up.
I mean, maybe they're okay with it. That was the saving grace of it. He said, blame it on me. All right, well, at least it won't be blamed on all Republicans, but it will be.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's
only
a tiny bit of positive news out of Congress.
Okay.
The Senate passed the conference report on the Farm Bill yesterday.
Okay.
And that does not include punishment for poor people trying to get food.
Oh, hey, good.
Yeah.
Because it was gonna.
It was gonna. The House version of the bill had work requirements for everybody on food stamps. Mm-hmm. Senate said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to pass this bill. Yeah. And the Senate prevailed.
Okay.
So that's not in there. And a lot of really horrible environmental stuff, lifting restrictions on pesticides, bringing back DDT, weakening the Clean Water Act, all sorts of things that the House version had are not in there.
Okay. Well,
it's the Farm Bill. It's full of crap, but it's not as bad as it could have been by far.
That's nice. I'll take that as good news.
The bad part about this is that the administration is going to try to do with work requirements in terms of regulations and rules and waivers for the states that it couldn't get into this legislation.
Okay.
So that's a fight we're going to have next year.
All right. Well, we'll try and
that's going to have to happen pretty much at the state level.
Well, we're doing better there than we were before.
Yeah.
So that's
unless you're in
helpful.
Wisconsin.
Yes.
Or Michigan.
Right. Although I did see some indication yesterday, and I don't know if I put a story aside, but some indication that there would be perhaps some successful court challenges to at least some of the stripping of powers by the legislature. We'll see whether that comes through. I'll try and investigate the details of that later in the week. Right now it's just, well, that would be nice, but other than that, I don't have anything for you.
Okay.
Did you happen to see the Google hearings at all yesterday? Or enjoy those?
I heard about them.
Yeah. It sounded like a good time. There were a lot of people.
Steve King's upset that and he blames it on Google, that his staff's changes to Wikipedia are deleted. And that's Google's fault.
My kids really liked this story. I told them about it this morning at breakfast, about how they spent a couple of hours saying, if Google isn't biased, then how come you can find bad stories about me on the internets? And the kids are like, what? I can't. Yeah. So yeah,
did you see Ted Lieu's response to all of this?
No.
He was there with his phone Googling things, and he said, he put in as an example Steve Scalise and read the headlines.
Yeah.
And they weren't, too bad. Then he put in Steve King, and all of the headlines were racist. And he said, maybe if you're not doing bad things, the headline results won't be bad for you.
Right. Have you tried Googling one of the potential candidates for chief of staff, Rick Santorum? Read that, Steve, and you'll be happy with what you got.
Oh, I like that.
You should also, I'm just saying. There's a lot. All right. Well, anyway, it was a big, as they said on Huffington Post, big cell phone over and over again. So everyone seems to have enjoyed that. And I don't know what else. I guess just not much.
Well, they had
happening
another hearing scheduled for today. Did you see this?
No.
And it was going to be on something about taxes, and they decided that they had to cancel the hearing because they discovered that one of their key witnesses has written really, really insanely homophobic stuff about how homosexual sex acts should be taxed.
What?
Okay. Yeah.
Well, it'll make auditors' lives more interesting. Anyway.
I I'm really curious as to how you would.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that would probably necessitate reading the thing. That would be infuriating. But so they were going to have.
He also wrote a blog post arguing that feminism taught young women that equality is achieved by acting like promiscuous sluts.
Oh, yeah, I think that I heard that in class.
Title of that post: College Girls Unpaid Whores.
Okay. I think that maybe, did he perhaps cut and paste that from his search history by some chance? I think that's what happened.
Oh, it was a hearing today about the minimum wage. They were trying to get rid of the minimum wage.
Oh, okay. I think the college whores one is better. They should have a hearing on that.
Well, I like the idea of taxing and regulating homosexual acts.
Sure.
Because,
yes, I think that would be I don't know. I don't even know how you would.
Get government out of my life.
I guess so. It's possible, these days, electronics and technology being what it is. I think if they can make Easy Pass work, they should be able to make this work. You just have to get people to sign up, and I don't know, Is it a higher? Do we tax everything and just tax one side
I don't
of the equation
get
more?
Into, I have not looked for the details.
Because I haven't saved enough money for this. I don't know whether I'm subject to this.
What exactly is going to be a homosexual act?
Right, that's true too. Hey, these days, who can tell? That's right.
Where do you draw the line?
Exactly. Right. Queer eye for the straight guy owes $1 billion in back taxes.
Using hair product? If you're a man?
Yes, that will rob. What's in Donald Trump's hair? Not gay hairspray. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Ah, very interesting. So,
Slippery slope.
I thought, okay. Well, there's lots of tax craziness going on. I did see this morning that there was going to be a big tax event of some kind for, one of their, for a real estate development activity. Imagine that in this White House, that they canceled in Baltimore. And I guess because the AP now digging into things and reporting that some of the biggest beneficiaries of this tax break getting pushed are Ivanka and Jared. Okay. So they're now having a quiet White House event about that one instead. But hey, I missed the whole thing about the witness.
Yeah.
Well, that's wild. They'll write anything, and you can get anybody into this White House at this point. I don't see why they are having a difficult time getting a chief of staff. You can get any loon you want. They're all working there already.
It's the only thing that gives me any feeling of encouragement in all of this, that there are things that still are too blatant and too awful for them to do publicly.
Yes.
Like give Jared and Ivanka massive tax breaks for real estate development.
They may yet do that, but
they'll still do it quietly, but there is recognition at least that that's not something normal.
Well, maybe the big objection to the witness was that he was proposing increasing taxes.
Probably.
More so than anything else.
Can't do that. Can't do that.
The log cabin Republicans were there to say no. So, excellent. All right. Well, that's a wacky development. We'll keep an eye on that one. But we're going to wrap up for today. But thank you for coming by. It was good to hear from you again.
You are welcome. I apologize for last week.
Hey, that's okay. Everyone understands it's been a crazy time out there, and we're lucky to get you at this stage of the game when things are going.
I have to remember
bonkers.
If I'm calling in sick on a Wednesday, I have to call in sick for you as well, and that's just I'm gonna get stuck. Yes.
Okay. Well, if you're sick, I mean, come on. It's not top of mind. I can certainly understand that. So we're glad to have you when we get you, and we hope that that happens again next Wednesday as well.
I'm glad to be here. I hope we have fun hearings to talk about next week.
There's going to be something. All right. Thanks again, Joan. We'll check in with you next week. Joan McCarter, our senior political writer, making time for us. Thanks again. And time for us now to make space for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which comes up next right here on Roots Radio. And because It's a great transition that we get on Wednesdays because talking with Joan stops me from starting in on long articles that make it difficult for me to get to all the great stories coming up on Justice's program. Next, let's just get to it now, shall we? Starting off in the Bistro Cafe. The only thing that would have made the clash between Trump, Pelosi, and Schumer more enjoyable is if at the end Nancy had tossed Chuck her purse. Yes, that would have made it a fun one. And then, on the rest of the menu, Arkansas proposed cuts to Medicaid funds to assisted living facilities. The Trump administration spent more than $13 million, oh boy, to hire 2 border agents. Why? And the GOP quest to shrink food stamps is thwarted as a clean farm bill passes the Senate, just as Joan told us a moment ago. I'll tell you what, after this announcement, I'll tell you what comes up at the Chef's Table section of the program.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
In answer to some of our questions, 4 government sources said there is no evidence to Trump's claim that U.S. authorities, quote, caught 10 terrorists at the border, and NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft finds signs of water on the Earth-killer asteroid Bennu. Yikes, who's set to kill Earth?